Hello parents and professionals, and welcome to my final video for 2020. Wow! We've had a bit of a year, haven't we? If you are not already subscribed to this channel, then make sure that you go ahead and click the red subscribe button. Make sure that you give this video a thumbs up before you even get to the end of it. And if you have any comments throughout, then you can leave them in the comments box down below. So, yeah, it's been a year. I am exhausted. I don't know about you. I don't know if I'm just Christmas exhausted, 2020 exhausted, COVID exhausted, and I'm guessing you might feel something along the same kinds of lines. So that's why it's particularly unfair that I'm here today to talk to you about putting your own exhaustion to one side and making some extra efforts to really tune in to what the children and young people around you are really telling you about their experience of what's going on for them. Because what can happen for us sometimes is when we're busy having our own experience and our own feelings about what's going on in the world at the moment, is we just assume that we know what's going on for the other person or the other people around us. And I don't just mean like assuming they're okay when maybe they're not, although that's also a thing. I'm talking really about assuming you know what their experience has been like. And this is something that is an easy mistake to make when it comes to dealing with children and young people, because sometimes they might say something that gives us a clue as to what their experience is, but actually it transpires that's not really an accurate representation of either what was really going on for them or what's going on for them now. And that can happen sometimes because they lack the verbal vocabulary that's required to really explain what their experience is for them, or because their feelings simply change so very quickly, and so the way that they feel about something now might be very different to how they felt about it at the time. I'd like to give you a working example. So not too long ago, I had a young person who came to see me with his dad, and it was for a consultation session. And so I got started, as I always do, by saying, tell me a little bit about why you've come to see me here today. What is the problem? And what was quite interesting was that I had two people before me telling me two very different things. So for the young person, they were reporting that they felt particularly anxious. They were reporting that they had this feeling of anxiety since maybe a year ago. And they were reporting that these feelings of anxiety had started as a result of having to go back to school after the COVID lockdown had come to an end. And yet, simultaneously, the parent that was sat next to them was very much expressing these problems started about 2 years ago. They started as a result of a school transition, and it started because they got into the wrong group of friends. Now, this young person was a teenager, so they were of an age where not only do they kind of know their own mind, but they were that kind of a teenager, or in that kind of a teenagery stage where they really felt like they knew their own mind. And so what started unfolding before me was almost a debate about what this child's experience was and where this child believed their anxiety was coming from. Now, I'm not saying that the parent in this instance was incorrect, but what I am saying is when we work with children and young people, we're gonna get started with where they're currently at. And so if where they're currently at is saying these problems have started because I got stressed out about going back to school after lockdown, then that's our starting block. Like, that's where we're gonna begin the conversation from. Now, that's not to say that it won't eventually evolve, maybe more towards something like what the parent is describing. But what we want to avoid doing is creating a source of conflict at the exact moment in time that a young person is being vulnerable, opening up and disclosing how they are feeling to us. Because what that will do for them is it invalidates their opinion on their own emotions, and thus ends up invalidating the emotions that they are feeling. It also makes it seem as if we're not really listening. Not only am I disregarding the feelings you report to feel, but I'm not even listening to them because I know more about what's going on for you. Now, as I say, let me repeat it. Sometimes it might be that other party, that parent, that professional who's saying, no, it's not that. I think you feel like this, or I think you feel that way because it's not what you're saying, it's what I'm saying. You're not necessarily wrong, but if we go in with that opposition initially, then it gives them the message that we're not listening. And even if you really feel the desire to communicate what you believe is going on for them in a very gentle and subtle way, you will very gently and subtly give them the message that you're not listening and that their feeling about their problem is not valid. So it's really important that you don't respond with, I hear what you're saying, and I'm just wondering if maybe it's actually got more to do with this. Because it looks to me like actually this is the problem and not that thing that you're saying, but I think this about the problem that you're having. Although that's perhaps worded in a less aggressive manner, it's still not listening to what they are saying. And when a young person is at a point of going, I've got a problem and I want to open up about it, I want to share it with you, then actually our job at that point in time is to say, tell me about it. Tell me what your experience is. Where do you think that's coming from? And it might well be that as a result of our gentle questioning style, we kind of take them on a bit of a journey where they end up landing in the place that we thought the problem really existed. But if instead of doing that, we just force our opinion of what the problem is upon them, then we're going to end up creating some tension there. So a really good question to ask in this kind of a scenario where it's very open and very gentle is, tell me more about that. Now, I've spoken about this particular statement before. I think it was when I'd just come out of my master practitioner training with the group that I trained up. I'm thinking it must have been at the tail end of last year. It was probably a year ago that I was last teaching master prac. Maybe it was the start of this year. I don't know. This year, it's all been a blur for the last 12 months. So we were really practicing using this question. And it sounds like it's, that it's just a statement. It's not even really a question, is it? Tell me more about that. But actually, what you can do is repeat back what they've just said and then tag, tell me more about that, onto the end of it. Because if you just say, tell me more about that, they might be like, there's nothing more to tell you. But if you pick one specific thread from everything that they've given you, then you can gradually start worming your way down the various different rabbit holes of what they have shared with you. So let's say that our young person comes to us and says, I feel like I'm really struggling with anxiety about going to school. It started since lockdown came to an end. And then you say, anxiety, tell me more about that. This might lead them into giving you more information about the specific symptoms that they're experiencing. Alternatively, we could pick up on another thread there and we say, since you went back to school after lockdown, tell me more about that. So we're repeating something back from what they've said and kind of pulling at that a little bit more to eke out what other information might be behind it that's useful for us. And it's simply by using that phrase, tell me more about that. Now, what you can also do alongside this to give it even more effectiveness is to really think about your intonation, specifically the pace of your voice as you say it. So obviously, when we first start communicating with anybody, you're going to be pitching your pace at the same speed, the same volume, the same pitch, the same beat, rhythm, everything else as the person that you're talking to, regardless of how old they are. And that matching and mirroring of their communication style puts them more at ease. What we can also start to do though is, once we've got them at ease, is to start leading the conversation into a different direction. And what we might want to do if we have a young person who's disclosing something about, some kind of concern around their mental health or well-being, is as we use that tell me more about that statement, tagged on to some information that they've shared with us, is that we gradually begin to slow it down and deepen the pitch of our voice. And what this does is it really gives off the message of, I'm taking what you're saying very seriously, I'm really listening, because I'm going at a speed where I want to be able to comprehend what you're saying to me. It starts to put them and us into this kind of emotional feedback loop that we're sharing together in that moment, so that if they are feeling even anxious or vulnerable about sharing this information with us, we begin to sound incredibly reassuring, and we also begin to act like therapists in some way, because this is a tactic that therapists often use, not just for building rapport, but also for leading their clients towards more of a solution. Another thing that can be really helpful to add in here is that once you have had that conversation of exploring what the problem is to not jump in with your own solutions for that problem, because the likelihood is those solutions that you are sharing are solutions that would work really well for you, but not necessarily would apply to them. So instead of giving them solutions, you could say to them, what do you think would be a good next move here? What do you think you should do about that? So that you start to get them not only thinking for themselves in the pursuit of coming up with solutions for their problems, which is such an important thing that I could do a whole other show about it if I haven't already done so, which I might have done. But in addition, it means that the solutions they're coming up with are much more likely to be the right fit for them because they came up with the solution. If they're struggling to come up with the solutions, and we can inspire them to come up with ideas by sharing the ones that we've got, but not necessarily framing it as, you should do this, or I think this would be the right thing for you to do. Instead, we would use a softening frame around it, such as, I'm just guessing, but this might be a way for you to think about that problem. Or, I don't know if this would work for you, but if it were me, I would think about this. And so that way they don't have to fully accept it, and they don't also have to go through the discomfort or embarrassment of fully rejecting whatever idea you have put forward to them either. So here's what we're going to be taking from our video today. First of all, we're going to be making sure that we are doing good listening skills when young people come to us with problems or concerns that they have. And we're going to really exercise this muscle of making sure that we give them space to say what they want to say without us sharing our opinions or views on the situation. Instead, we're going to let go of any preconceived ideas of what we've got about what we think their problem is, and we're going to use a gentle questioning technique to lead them on a journey to wherever that may take us. And the beautiful thing about doing that is that not only do they sometimes land where you thought the problem was all along, but sometimes they land somewhere else very different to where you thought that the problem was going to go. And that's when you realise, turns out I don't have all the answers after all. Turns out I don't know everything after all. So we're going to use that gentle questioning style using the tell me more about that statement. And then instead of enforcing our own solutions on them, we are going to ask them what solutions they can come up with. If they need a little prompt or some ideas to get them started, then we can share the ideas that we've got with them, but we're going to take care to do that in a way which doesn't say you should do this or I think that. Instead, we will put frames around it that soften our solution ideas that we share by saying things like, I'm guessing this might be an idea for you, or if it were me, I would do this. Do you think that something like that would work for you or not? And then that way they can perhaps take or adapt the ideas that you've given them and create some brand new alternatives that will actually work for them. And when they come up with ideas and solutions that will actually work for them, they are much more likely to then put those into action and begin to start solving their problems. So that is the most important thing I wanted to share with you at the end of 2020. I don't know if you'll be getting this video even in 2020. So if not, Happy New Year. And for those of you who are subscribed to the NLP for Kids newsletter, I just wanted to give you guys a heads up that these videos will now be drip fed to you throughout the month. So you no longer have to wait a whole month to be getting content from us. Instead, we're going to be sending stuff out to you on a much more regular basis. So it's not more content, it's just spread out rather than all coming to you in one hit. So you may well have received this particular video in isolation and be wondering, but where's the one that I normally share with my children? That one's also coming soon. So that video will come to you at a separate point in time if indeed you're subscribed to the NLP for Kids newsletter. If you're not already subscribed to that newsletter and you would like to be, then just head on over to the NLP for Kids website. So that's N for November, L for Lima, P for Papa, a numerical 4, kids, so kids.org, and you can sign up to our newsletter via the homepage. Alright, and that is everything for today. Thank you so much for watching and listening, and I'll see you all in the next video. Bye!